Hey guys, this is Julian of Julian Gray Media. Today we're going to take a look at Izotope's new wicked plugin Neutron and show you some of the features that it entails. So let's hop over to the studio and let's get started. Cool, so we are now in Ableton Live. As you can see, this is one of the projects I've been working on with my buddy Jason White. It's a kind of housey, kind of techno-y thing. I don't know, I'd say it's kind of more tech housey. Now, let's just give this thing a playback real quick, and then we'll start mixing with Neutron. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the track is like. It's a decent mix currently, but we're going to experiment with Neutron on this track. Now, if you aren't familiar with Izotope Neutron and their advertising and all the hype that's surrounding it, it's essentially a comprehensive mixing plugin that enables a EQ, compressor, multiband compressor, transient shaper, and I believe a few other things. No, I think that's it. And essentially what it does and what makes it so interesting is that it is an analysis tool as well. So it analyzes what you play through the plugin, and then it assigns an intelligent preset to whatever it is that you're playing through it. So if it hears something that might sound off in its opinion, and it's very objective, it'll turn it down, or it might compress it, or it'll add an exciter or something like that to, counteract it or to exemplify it a little bit. So let's just load in Neutron without any further ado so we can hop right into this. The feature, it's called a track assistant, and essentially what it does is it analyzes what you play through it, or whatever you put it on, whatever channel you put it on, and then it will apply an intelligent preset of these 5 elements to it. That's Neutron in a nutshell, at least. But to give you an idea of how well it works and how cool it is, we're going to give this thing a play. So first of all, let's just enable the saxophone channel that we have here. That's just a saxophone sample. We're going to solo it and give it a play. Now at the moment, as you can see, Izotope is doing nothing. The EQ is flat, the compressor is flat, with a 0% threshold, and that is because we haven't run the track assistant yet. And like I said, it's going to analyze what we play through it and then give us essentially an intelligent preset. This plugin is essentially for you guys that will load in a plugin like an Izotope limiter or a fab filter EQ, and then apply a preset anyway to whatever it is that you're doing, and then modify the preset. It's kind of a plugin designed for those kind of people. And rather than starting from the beginning, like starting from scratch and dragging in an EQ and a compressor and an exciter and a transient shaper on your own, this is kind of a shortcut that will give you a good starting ground to work from. So we're going to give this thing a play and actually, run the track assistant now. So we're going to click on track assistant. As you can see, it takes 4 to 10 seconds to analyze my track. And as you can see, it's done, and it applied this cool EQ curve to it. There's a few different modes of EQ, but we're going to get back into the EQ in a moment. Essentially, what the track assistant just did is it analyzed what we played. It applied an EQ, a compressor, a second compressor, and an exciter to the sound, and it labeled it as a clean sound instead of something like vocals, guitar, bass, or drums. Clean is kind of a catch-all for everything else. So it applied these settings, applied this compressor setting, it applied these multi-band settings, and it applied this exciter setting, notice that it disabled the transient shaper because this is a sound that doesn't need transient shaping. Like something like drums would utilize that, but we aren't using those in this version of Neutron. And likewise, it also put these effects in this chain. You can personally, like, subjectively modify this chain and put things where they belong in your subjective opinion, but it kind of objectively went and found the best places for these effects to go in the chain. And again, this plugin isn't designed to replace engineers or to replace traditional mixing and engineering. It's designed to give you an intelligent preset to start your engineering on so that you can hop right into the subjective matters of mixing, the more fun things to do, instead of worrying about balancing everything. So like I said, we're going to hop right back into the EQ because compressors, as you can see, it's just a multi-band compressor, just a normal one. As you can see, band 2, band 3, you can enable band 1. And it's just the same as any other multi-band. This is just doing this is a multi-band compressor as well, but we're running it as a stereo compressor. It's just compressing everything. As you can see, this band is the full width of the spectrum, and we also have it compressing here. And then the exciter is doing a little bit of excitement in, it looks like, the higher and a little bit in the lower areas. But again, these are very, very rudimentary things that everyone knows already. And if you don't, then you can check out, I think I did a video on multi-band compression, and you can click on the link to that above me right now. But again, these three are very, ununique. They're unique in the sense that they are intelligently programmed, but they're just regular effects, and they can be found in other Izotope utilities. The thing that makes this plugin especially cool is the EQ it has. So as you can see, there's different modes of EQing. You have the band shelf, you have the proportional Q, just like any other EQ. You have the frequency of the band, just like any other EQ. The gain and the Q, just like any other EQ. So you're wondering, like, if everything's like any other EQ, what makes this thing special? First of all, we have the dynamic mode on the EQ. There's only a select few EQs that allow you to do this. And basically what this allows us to do is whenever it hears a sound in a certain frequency, it's going to turn down that band. So instead of applying a static cut that will cut everything out of that sound at all times, it only applies that cut when it hears that cut. This is especially useful for things like kick drums, or for things like balancing two conflicting midtones that are in the same frequency spectrum that you need to balance out without cutting and removing everything at all times. So we're going to give this thing a play so you can visualize that a little bit more here. So Izotope took this red band here, which is that big cut here, and it's doing a dynamic cut. As you can see, that white line, which represents what's actually being cut at any given time, is moving according to the threshold set here. So if we hit play, whenever it hears this frequency here at this threshold, it's going to turn down to this amount, as you can see in this cut. So if we make it a little bit more sharp and move it up, it's going to be easier to visualize. Yeah, so whenever it hears it, it turns it down. We're going to go back to what it had here and hop into the next cool thing about this. First, we're going to create another instance of Neutron. This is when it starts to get really, really useful in the terms of mixing. We're going to title this Neutron Sax because this is the saxophone Neutron instance. We're going to go to that pluck we had earlier. I'm actually going to turn down that delay just so we don't get CPU issues. Actually, let me turn down the feedback a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a new instance of Neutron, like the other one. And we're going to have it scan that pluck sound. So we're going to hit play and do track assistant. It's going to listen back to the pluck sound now. Same as before. And again, it applied an intelligent preset. Now this is pretty extreme in my opinion. I'm going to actually lower the track assistance aggressiveness to medium. And we're going to hit track assistant again so I can get another cleaner listen, because that listen was a little bit too much in my opinion. So cool, we got that cut right here, and we got the cut here. As you can see, it did the dynamic mode EQ again. But what gets really cool is when we enable the masking function of the plugin here. What we're going to do is we're going to go into this drop down, we're going to select saxophone. We're actually going to name this pluck. Now what this allows us to do, as you can see, there's that cut we made in the other plugin chain. What this allows us to do is to visualize two channels at the same time, something that's never been done before like this, and actually view how the two channels are interacting and masking each other. Now if you're familiar with engineering at all, or if you're not, masking is essentially when you have two frequencies in two different channels or two different sounds playing at the same time and the same range, and when it gets to a certain level of volume, they start to cancel each other out and you start to have problems, and that's what we call masking. Now what Izotope Neutron allows us to do is to actually visualize that, which is something that's never been done before in a plugin. If we go back to the pluck, we can see when we hit play, this white region here is area that Neutron detects as masking. If we turn up the sensitivity on that mask, we can actually see a histogram above the plugin. Oops, that's the wrong one. Histogram above the plugin of these pink bars you're about to see of places where the sounds are masking each other. Let's give this thing a play. CPU problems. Let's turn this down a little bit and then get a little bit more of a close reading. And oops, there we go. So you can see the major regions where these two channels are conflicting, and this is something that you've never been able to do before in real time. You can literally see a histogram of the two sounds as they're masking each other. I'm going to expand this so it stops doing that. And what this allows us to do is to EQ the two channels above each other and to see exactly where they're masking and to compare and contrast them without having to bounce back and forth between the two channels. So we can cut, let's say we cut some out of the pluck so we can make some space for that sax to poke through. Now there's something called inverse link mode, which allows us to move these and then do the inverse on the other one. So instead of dropping this 10 decibels, we might want to just take it down 5 and compensate for it with a 5 decibel boost in the bottom. Let's see how this sounds. So you can just adjust that and play with it a little bit. But you can instantly see the power in this. You can literally compare and contrast two separate channels above each other and dynamically edit the two together to get an idea and a visual cue of where things are conflicting in the mix. We also have the kick drum. Let's apply a neutron to the kick drum. To save CPU, I'm actually going to delete it from one of these other channels because I'm kind of cutting it close here. And we'll actually do that. Let's actually remove both other instances so we don't have so much CPU problem. And then we're going to actually do a drum analysis here. Let's listen to this kick drum here. What we're going to do is we're going to apply the neutron and we're going to hit track assistant like we did with the other channels. Oops. Give it a second. And and as you can see, this is the curve it applied, and it recognized that it's a drum. It also added an equalizer, an exciter, and a compressor in this chain. I'm actually surprised it didn't add a transient shaper, which is the only other thing we haven't really covered. And you can find other videos on transient shapers. It essentially shapes the shape of the transient that the kick or the drum is making, or the sound in general is making, and you can do it dynamically just like you did with the EQ and the compressor. But again, that is a drum analysis, and it's really, really good. And we can again play with these because none of these are designed to be the permanent, final fix-all solution. It's just a way that you can hop right into the subjective matters of mixing instead of, wasting your time balancing everything else out. So that is Izotope Neutron. I hope you guys pick it up. It's a really, really powerful mixing plugin. It's like something we've never seen before, with dynamic EQ and comparative EQs and a masking histogram, which is something that's never been done before. I hope you guys pick it up. The Izotope guys were generous enough to let me review their product. I hope you guys go and give them a like and, just check them out in general. They're a really awesome plugin company. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike, and let me know why in the comments below. I make a video every Wednesday and Friday, and I am Julian of Julian Gray Media. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.